Yeah, PyScript. PyScript, actually, I've been talking about that for half a year now, so more and more people know about it. I think I don't have to like really go, but just in case, I'm going to go through the basics. But before that, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Cheuk. Hello. I work for Anaconda, so PyScript is something that has been working on in Anaconda, so that's why like I'm very passionate to talk about it. I also work in open source project. I love open source. That's why I really love like Anaconda support lots of open source project, especially in kind of data science and scientific programming, things like that. Also, I organize a lot of conference. I think some of you already heard me talk about Pyjamas Conf yesterday, but just in case, I'm going to repeat myself again at the end of the talk. But anyway, okay. So, what is PyScript? PyScript actually is something that like was announced in PyCon US earlier this year. It's a framework, so some people will be like, "Is PyScript a new language?" And like, is it something like between JavaScript and Python? What is it? So PyScript definitely not a new language. It's a framework. So basically, I will give you some example, and then you will have more understanding of how to use it and like why is it a framework. And so PyScript allows you to run Python application in the browser. So again, people will scratch their head. It's like, oh, what's the difference? There's already something that is like already made in the past that you can run Python in the browser. Like, for example, there are interpreters that interpret Python in JavaScript, or like compiler that compile even like Python in JavaScript. That's very funky. But the PyScript is not those. PyScript is not to replace JavaScript, and you can use PyScript with JavaScript. Actually, there's a very quick example that I'm using it with D3, which is a JavaScript library. It's quite cool. Also, thanks to PyData and Wasm, because what makes PyScript different from all these different interpreter or compiler that like try to make Python into JavaScript is that we are compiling to Wasm. So it's kind of like one step ahead, I would say, because Wasm is for those of you who haven't heard about that before, it's WebAssembly. So basically, instead of the assembly code that is made for your computer that kind of run on the chip on your computer, is the WebAssembly is an assembly language that actually run the code in your browser in a kind of like it's kind of like a virtual machine in your browser, and then like it will run on the browser. So the project that actually started this is a PyData project. It started from Mozilla. They have this PyData project that compile a lot of things into WebAssembly. So one of the project was compiling Python into WebAssembly. So this is the project that does it. And because of that, that kind of first started, and then now PyScript can use PyData as the runtime. And now we can run Python in the browser, which is amazing. So one thing that make why like PyScript is, I think, in my opinion, more promising than the other attempts to run Python in the browser is that thanks to PyData, there's lots of packages that are available for you to use. So imagine if you can only run vanilla Python in the browser. That's not very useful, isn't it? You'll be like, well, like, if I can only run vanilla Python, maybe I would just like I may as well write JavaScript, right? Because why Python is so useful, a lot of cases is that because Python got a lot of very nice packages that, for example, for data science, for machine learning, all the stuff is like available for Python, and we want to run that in the browser. So without those packages, I think it won't be as powerful as it is right now. So how to use PyScript? Yeah, like, well, it's great, but how to use it, right? Is it very complicated? No. So I hope you see it well. So yeah, so there's like, so this is basically a hello world kind of code. So it's just very, very, very simple. It's just plotting some random numbers with Matplotlib. The first thing that you do when you want to use PyScript, so it's run on the browser, so everything is done in the HTML file. So this is the HTML file. So first of all, you need those 2 lines of code. Actually, you are pulling in a JavaScript. So you can see it, like .js, like PyScript.js. So it's a JavaScript code. So yes, actually to use this, and now this is kind of an example how you can pull that from the CDN. So it's hosted somewhere in the internet. So as long as you have internet connection, the PyScript in this HTML file will work because it pull in that PyScript.js for you. So if you want to host it yourself, you can actually download the whole package of those like, manifesto, like those like the compile version of the PyScript, and then you just it's more than one file, but you put them somewhere and then you pull in the PyScript.js file and it will work. This is the latest version, so you can see it's latest in the link. If you want to see what's past, there's also the alpha version, but why would you use an alpha version if we have a non-alpha version? So, this is like how I recommend people to do it nowadays. But on top of that, we also have a call in a CSS file. So again, like mystery, why do I need a CSS file? CSS is a style sheet, right? Just kind of make your website look a certain way. So it's kind of maybe changing the color or things like, why do you need that? The reason being that actually we can use a Python repo in the HTML file. So PyScript also includes a repo that you can add very easily into your web page. So if you're not using that repo, this CSS doesn't really matter that much. So if I just want to write some Python and I don't care about the repo, you can skip that if you want. But again, like if people want to try it out, I would recommend just put those 2 lines in and then start trying. Next thing, of course, write Python. So the most direct way of doing it is just to have like a pair of PyScript tag. So this is how a PyScript tag looks like. So it's Py-script. So some people are like asking question like, why is it not script and then it's Python? No, this is how it looks like. And you can also control what are the outputs. So for example, I'm plotting a graph and want it to be put in a certain kind of div. So I would put it, output equals to plot, so I can have the plot div somewhere in the page. So it won't be at a random place, it will be a certain place that I want it to be. And then, this is just Matplotlib and NumPy. I won't explain too much. I just assume people have tried to use NumPy before. Or just imagine it's any Python program that plots a graph. And then, if you want to use any libraries, including NumPy on Matplotlib, you have to include the package. So in the latest version, we do it with the pyconfig tag. So this is how a pyconfig tag looks like. Again, it's not something that is similar to JavaScript. We have pyconfig tag. Okay. So pyconfig will accept 2 file format. You can have JSON or TOML. So this is how JSON will look like. I'll talk about detail in the next slide, so don't worry. So this is how you write a HTML file that run Python. It's like just like that. So you need the 2 lines that include the PyScript.js and PyScript.css, and then you can write PyScript tag. You can write Python code there, and then if you need extra things, pyconfig is going to help you. And also, you can see that actually above pyconfig, there's the plot is there, so I can control whether the output is displayed. So that's the basic. So the pyconfig tag, right? This is new, so that's why I put it as a separate section. Because for those of you who have tried the alpha version, we were using pyenv, so it was not pyconfig. So this is new. So what it is? So well, I will cover the basic here. If you want to know about the detail, you can again check the documentation. The link is actually here in this slide. So pyconfig take a 2 format. It take the TOML format or take the JSON format. So the default is TOML format so far. So yeah, of course, all these things, because PyScript is still in active development, so all these things may change. So I always have to have a disclaimer that as of now, it's like this. So you can kind of, so it's TOML as default, or you can actually use the type keyword options there to change it in like between TOML or JSON format. So you just use this to define what packages you're using. You can also define, so you can see that like packages, very straightforward, right? I have 2 packages. But also you have the path, which pulls in some of like your custom Python files. So because people keep asking, right? like, oh, I write all the Python code in the HTML file, but it's messy. I don't want the people to be able to see it, and I want to put it somewhere, more organized in another file. Yeah, you can do that. You can put it, for example, this is the same location as your HTML file, so it's like, that's why, oh, it's like this. So there's a data.py, you can pull that in. But the catch is that you can't just run it locally. I mean, like, if you, for example, you have an HTML file and then you call in a data.py which sits in your computer, and you open it in your browser, it won't work, because for those of you who have done some development with kind of web development, you know that the browser is not allowed to touch your local file system unless something, the user is providing a path or whatever. So I would always say that if you want to try something like that, you run a local server and try it. But anyway, too much detail. I'm trying to be more straightforward. Okay. So another format to use the PyConfig is JSON. It's doing the same thing here. You see, it's like the same thing, but it's just that instead of I'm writing TOML, I'm writing JSON format. Personally, I like that. I just like JSON. You may disagree. It's okay. We can agree to disagree. And the more powerful thing that I think is the last one, that you can actually have again, you can store it in another file. So for example, I want to hide the PyConfig because I may have something like an API key or something I don't want to show to everybody. You can store it in another file and call it in that file. And then you can use source equals to a custom.toml or custom.json, and then you can call it in. You can also set extra thing on top of it. So here you can see the extra. There's like the path. We can also set it there as well on top of the config source. So now PyConfig become really more powerful than PyEnv, which is before you can only do certain things. So so PyConfig now is not just for you to call in a package or a local file. You can also use it, well, of course, again, plug in the packages. So some people, they kind of, thought that, oh, it needs to be something, just like Maplib, I put in the name of it there. But actually, you can also host your local will. So for example, I have a Python package that I'm not releasing it on PyPI because it's a private project. I don't want to open it to the world. You can, package it yourself, create the will for the Python, and then you can host it and let your PyScript use it. So you can do it. Or if you want to self-host some of the packages because you want to make sure the version is what you want, you can also host the will. You find the version that you like. Let's say I find a version of, I don't know, what packages do you use? I don't know, some package X, right? I was finding the version I want to use, and then I download the will, I host it, so it's make sure that that's the version that I want. Also, it lets you change the runtime setting. Right now, 99.9% of the time, everybody is using PyIodine because it provides lots of packages, like I said. So it's very, very useful, especially when you are doing scientific things. But there are actually development that was kind of allow you to change the runtime. So in the future, maybe we can run, let's say, MicroPython, which make it way faster, because if things run on the browser, you don't want the user to wait for minutes, right? You want, everything beyond 1 second. Nobody have the patience. So something that's fast runtime, maybe you can use it instead of using PyIodine, which is comparatively a huge, bigger package. Also, you can add some metadata there. You can add the description of the script, the license, author name, whatever's kind of help with the documentation. So you can also do that with the PyConfig. So, so other than PyConfig and the PyScript tag itself, there's also this PyRepo tag. So this is where why you need the CSS, right? This is the repo, the Python repo that you could edit in the web page. So it's kind of like the Jupyter Notebook thing. For those of you who have used Jupyter Notebook, you can, you have a box, you can type in your Python code, Shift Enter, it will execute. So you can now do that by just adding the PyRepo tag in your web page. So imagine you have your web page, and then you can try the code out. You can try it out yourself, but it's embed a Jupyter Notebook there without the backend, so which is very cool. So it's as simple as that. You can try copying this code, put it in an HTML file, and run it. How many lines? 7 lines. And now you can run Python in the browser. So, yeah, again, like so far, all the examples, I'm like using this, very simple, putting those 2 lines there and pulling it from a CDN. Of course, you can host it yourself, just like other CDNs, because I've talked with some kind of web developer, and they say, oh, but if I can't like really host it myself, I can't have full control for like what I'm using. It's like, don't worry, you can host it yourself, of course. Now PyScript, when they release it on the GitHub, you can download all the code that you need to include PyScript. So, why is it useful, right? Like, and then again, back to the question: will PyScript replace Django? So, it seems like you're doing a totally different things, right? You're doing it on the front end. So why is it useful? Why do it on the front end? Like Django was fine, was beautiful. I love Django, but why? Well, I love Django too, but sometimes I want something to run on the front end because of reasons. Here are a few of them that I can think of. Sometimes you have some application that the computation is heavy. You would rather the user do it at their own risk, right? You would rather like not. It depends. Like for example, like it's a pet project. You don't want to, pay a lot of money into giving people resources to play with something. Then you can, let them run it in the browser, so you don't have to worry about that. Or something like, for example, the repo thing, right? Like I want people to try my code, for example, in my documentation, but you don't necessarily want people to do whatever they like, right? They can mine Bitcoin. That's a concern, like GitHub does a lot of things to make sure that people can't mine Bitcoin with their GitHub action or something like that. So if people are just running the application in the front end, you don't have to worry about that. If they're mining Bitcoin, they're mining on their machine, not on your machine, so not on your resources. That's great. Sometimes like in research or data science world, a lot of times the data is very sensitive. You're not supposed to have it, send it over the internet to another, service and run it there. So you may actually have an application that you can ship your application in the browser to your client, and then if they want to run the data, so they can just do it on their machine. You don't have to set up a service that they have to send things over the internet, which is quite risky for the sensitive data. So this is some of the use case. So yeah, will PyScript replace Django? Of course not, but we can make a lot of fun stuff. So personally, I've come up with an example that actually you can see how I use PyScript together with Django. So disclaimer, this example is very, very minimal and it's not deployment friendly. Just to show you the proof of concept. So what I do here, so if you can so there's already a link in the slide. So if you go there, you can see that I have a kind of a Django infrastructure there. And you can see that inside I have set up some commands that basically these are the script that I use to train the data. So after running these scripts, what happened is that I would have a model. So I just pickle the model, right? So again, proof of concept doesn't need to be super sophisticated. So I pickle the models and I put them in the static. So again, you can host the PyScript yourself here. So there's just demonstrate how you can self-host it. And you can also self-host some of the wheels of your Python package if you want to. So for example, this is one of the packages that I use. And the model are sitting here. So it's not here. I forgot where I put it. But anyway, maybe you have to run it yourself because the model is too big. So you have to download it and do it step by step. But anyway, I put it somewhere here. It's not on GitHub, but you can generate it with those codes. So you just put it in the static file, static folder, and then you have your script running in the front end. So where's the HTML? Sorry, I'm a bit lost here. So. Oh, I forgot where I put it's a template. Yes, sorry. It's in the template. It's index.html. So inside, I write the PyScript here. So again, this is not a lot of code. A lot of code is already packaged in the other Python file. I just call them in. This is just the very basic stuff that I deploy the model. So the model is already trained. I pick out the model, and I put it in the static. So here, I just call back in the static. Here. yeah, you see I have all these packages that I use. Some of them hosted as well. But also I need these pickle file that is from here. So I have the Python file. Again, I don't put all the Python code in the HTML because otherwise it will be too complicated, too long. But also put the model that I pickled in the static as well. So you put all of them in, and then you just need some code to deploy them so it runs. So what it does is actually give you a recommendation. So for example, I put in my favorite movie, Iron Man. I always use it as say example, and then maybe like 5 recommendation. So this is running on my machine, right? I already trained it and have the pickle file. So if you get this GitHub repo, you have to train it yourself by using the command. But this is already done, so it's have the pickle file already ready to use. So I got 5 recommendations. You know, this is just deploying the model. So you are not using the front end to train the model, but you're just deploying it, so it will run in the front end. So that's how I imagine you can use PyScript for example, for machine learning. Maybe you get all the data, you train it at the back end, but you just deploy the model for the user to use, and they can do it at the front end. So I'm running a little bit short of time, so I'm not going to go over details, but these are more other examples that I use PyScript for data visualization. Feel free to check them out. Also, I put some like Q&A at the end because a lot of people ask questions. So I put some of them here. I hope it's your question, so you don't have to ask it again. For example, can you pull in a Python script? I've already demonstrated in example. You can check it yourself. The Python version that we're using, again, it depends on the runtime. If we're using the PyData as the runtime, it's up for the PyData what Python version they're using. So yeah, again, like why is the PyScript Py-script? It's not like this. It's not like JavaScript. Because browser doesn't support that. Browser, you know, they will assume this is JavaScript if they see the script. So we have to have the custom tag, PyScript tag. So this is how it is right now. It may change in the future. Why don't you just PyData? Because PyScript is a framework. It allows you to use PyData as the runtime. In the future, you may be able to change other runtimes, and also it just makes PyScript very easy to use because PyData, again, you have to have some knowledge of how to, you know, handle the event and all that stuff. So it's just make it very easy and more accessible. Again, like PyConfig, you can't pin a package so far. It may change in the future again, but you can host the whale if you want to make sure that the user is using that version. Python, what's the difference? Well, Python is compiling Python to JavaScript. PyScript is compiling Python into WASM. So again, 2 different things. Beware, some people mentioned Beware. Yes, Beware is a project that Anaconda support. So the creator of Beware is now my colleague. I'm so honored. So yeah, they might be, you know, helping Beware develop because we have PyScript. So that's the end. And then again, I have to mention it again. Online conference, free to attend. Please register for Pyjamas Conf. Talk to me. I have stickers for you. So that's it. Thank you. Okay. Do we have questions here? Oh, in the slides. Okay. I would do it myself. So I just from the top, I read the Python packages installed. Oh yeah, the Python packages is so if you go to the PyData website, they explained it that like they either use the micropip to pull that in, or that's actually PyData. They also support some packages themselves as well. So unless it's self-hosted, it will be pulled from PyData, especially when your runtime is PyData. Any problems with the security writing PyScript? Any problem? Yeah, writing PyScript differ in the terms of security compared to JavaScript. Security problem questions, I'm not so sure. So of course there will be some concern because it's something new. But I mean, again, like it's under active development. Things changes a lot. So if you have any concern about security, go to the PyScript GitHub repo. Send a issue, whatever that the team were happy to kind of look into it for you. How would you reference a Python file in production? Yes, so in that example, in Django, the Django example I provided, so I put it in the static, but actually any path that is accessible from the server, you can use it. It could be somewhere that is, again, like a CDN sitting, someone hosted it, or even on GitHub, you can pull in the file from GitHub, actually. But yeah, it's any URL that's accessible. What is the performance impact of the internal wheels? Performance impact, yes, so the wheels, right now, some packages are quite large and it takes some time to load. So again, it's not the fastest thing yet, but I discovered that if I host it myself, because if I host it and running locally on my machine, it's much faster. But yeah, some people mentioned, oh, can you cache it? So maybe in the future, if PyScript team decided to, oh, we can maybe cache the wheel, then it may be faster. But yeah, right now it's a bit slow. The wheels of the extension modules need to be compiled. Yes, that's a very good question. So all the wheels, so if the wheels, they're written in pure Python, so for example, Fuzzy Wuzzy, my example, is purely written in Python, you don't have to compile them separately. So any pure Python wheels, it will just work like magic if you hosted it. The catch is, if it's something like scikit-learn, that's why I can't host scikit-learn myself, because scikit-learn use some other extension other than Python. So what happened is that you have to see if it's available from the PyIodide team, because I'm using PyIodide as the runtime, so it needs to be a package that PyIodide support. So far, scikit-learn or the NumPy or the popular ones, they support it. So, but the catch is that you can't host the wheel yourself. You have to use their compile package by the PyIodide team. What about targeting HTML elements? Yes, actually, I haven't shown it here, but some of my visualization example have the interactivity. So you can actually, have full control of the DOM. So like the output, you can put it in a DOM element. You can also have event listener to some of the events happening in a button or something like a slide bar or whatever. So you have full interactivity. It works. PyIodide provide that interface for it to work. Does PyScript interact with the DOM? Yes, it does. I just explained it. Do you have it better feature than Python? Oh, someone asked a question about Pyjamas, no? Are you talking about the conference? Because I organized the Pyjamas Con. So if it's not Pyjamas Con, you may mean the framework, which is not what I am talking about. So can't help you. Vue.js. So again, like Vue.js is something that is like, JavaScript. So I don't think it will be, again, like a direct conflict or anything like that. Just people's preference. Like people sometimes like using Django as backend. Some people like using the JavaScript library as backend, Nook or whatever. Yeah, I don't think it's like one will be replacing another soon. So no. Is it possible to import so many things? Which one? The one on top? Okay, how would you handle a case with multiple Python files that reference each other? Ooh, so I think it's just work similar to the Python logic that I think you can't import it, things like that come in a loop. It will give you maybe some funky errors. But if you have, for example, I put in one file and that file references the other file, as long as the path is correct, I think it's okay. But I may be wrong. You can test it and tell me how it works. It's just what I think it will be. It's possible to import and run functions in a tag. So you mean like PyScript and then I don't think it works like that for now, but check the official documentation of PyScript. It's on pyscript.net. I think, docs.pyscript.net. So check the documentation there, and I don't think it works that way. But maybe it will be in the future. Again, things keep changing because it's under active development. So any more questions? I hope it's not, because I'm running out of time, sorry.